Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the BBSim and Scalability Brigade for April 16. We have 3 points on the agenda for today. The first one is something I want to bring up that is under investigation. If you take a look at the plots for some job, you'll notice that around Thursday last week, the delta between the new activation in Volta and the plot discovery in Onos has increased by quite a lot. This is currently under investigation. We have identified a patch that is responsible for that delay. That was actually surprising because it's basically a simplification of the way the models work in Volta. But we are looking at that, and hopefully we should get to the original performance in the next few days. Is there anyone that is familiar with this part of the code that wants to comment on it?
I think Kent is looking at it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Second topic I have on the agenda is the usual review of the numbers. Most of the numbers have remained stable, apart this difference in the activation. There have been some delays that are mostly given to this delay in the Onos part discovery. While one thing that is a little concerning that we haven't investigated yet is that the build for 1024 ONU is not succeeding anymore since we moved from multiple partition to multiple topics. And the build for 512 ONU is not very stable. If we go look at that particular build, you'll see that it succeeds once every few runs. No, I was not expecting this behavior at all, moving from multiple partitions to multiple topics. But I believe it needs some further investigation to figure out what is the difference between the two approaches, because I was expecting very similar preferences in the two. Second, by any chance, did you run the scale, or my here? I know you were running the scale test with the multiple partition. By any chance, did you run it on your setup with the multiple topics?
I just tested it, but I didn't run a scale test. But I can do it if you want.
If you want to give a try to make sure it's not something on our setup, that would be good. Otherwise, I can. I'll dig in it anyway.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'll try today.
Thanks.
I think it would be useful if we want to run this, because the problem is, like, if you're going to run at scale, it would be very hard to detect any issues. Maybe the run that's maybe just like 5 ONUs and see if you see any difference in timing. Even if it's tiny, it can point to some problems. Because if we run at 1,000 ONUs and it's failed, it's very hard to debug.
Oh, I know. Yeah, so what we did for the difference in the port reporting was to run with 64 ONU. I can try that and see where this delay is running with different adapters. Just as now, it will be pretty hard to set up an environment with the multiple partition on the same adapter, because the code has changed a lot since then.
What's the algorithm for assigning an ONU to a partition?
There's no partition.
ONU to a topic.
Sorry, a different topic. Sorry.
Oh, this is it's using constant hashing. So it's just using some parameters of that device and always assign it to the same topic.
So if I have, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just wondering if being all the adapters very similar as serial number, where a lot of them assigned to the same device, sorry, to the same adapter.
Now we can check, but with the test that I run locally with thousands of devices, they were all like assigned to different ones. Even the unique test has that capability as well. So it's I think if we run this with a limited ONUs, we should be able to see, because basically, like if I look at the result that you're having, like after 10 minutes things are being aborted, I mean, there's something that is waiting on the lock, or something is waiting for some action to happen. As long as we identify that, I think we'll solve that issue. This seems more like a bug than anything else to me.
Sorry, I didn't get that. It looks more like.
No, it's if you look at the data that you have in those bills, it's those bills are being aborted, waiting for ONUs, right? More than 10 minutes, and for ONU to be enabled. Chances are within the code, somewhere we are either waiting on the lock, or there's a deadlock, or there is an event that is supposed to happen, whether it's in the core, or in the adapter, OLT, or ONUs. It's something that we have to trace and to figure out. Like,
yeah, if we look at the details, basically the ONUs keep increasing up to a certain number, and then no new one are processed. So we definitely get in a lock state.
Isn't that the same behavior as when we were exceeding the threshold on what a single adapter can handle, or is this different?
Yeah, no, this seems like the same effect, at least. I don't know if the root cause is the same, but it seems to be the same effect. So I'll make sure that the ONU are evenly spread through the adapters.
Yeah, maybe there's some kind of threshold we could set that would generate some kind of message that say you've exceeded a single adapter's threshold capability or something.
Yeah, there's a load factor currently that is 1.1. In the sense of when I run those tests, it's most of them, the standard deviation is quite low. So it's in a sense of like they are like, if there is 1,000 devices and you have 10 adapters, so they will all be fairly close to 100. They won't be 100, but they will be anywhere between like 90 to 110, for example, in terms of the distribution.
Okay. Seems like it's repeatable though, so.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's good for debugging.
Yeah, I'll take a look at this right after the meeting. Something I noticed yesterday afternoon while I was collecting the numbers. Okay, these are a very good point. Is there anything else on this topic? Okay, then the last thing I have on the agenda is a first shot I took yesterday at adding support in BBSim for the Deutsche Telekom workflow. I prepared a patch that is still very, very rough, but it basically adds a couple parameters in BBSim so that we can specify how the tags are allocated. I wanted to show you what are the effects that we have. So I have a BBSim running. I hope everyone can see my terminal. Make the font a little bigger. I have a BBSim running with the usual defaults and a couple of menus. So if I connect to it and I get a list of the menus, we see that this is the usual AT&T setup where the S tag is common for all of the news and the C tag is incremental, and in the same way Sadis returns all the required information in the unit tag list for that device. Now if I stop BBSim and I restart it with different parameters, in this time I specified that the C tag allocation is shared between all the news, while the S tag allocation is unique per ONU, and I want the C tag to be 7. I can start BBSim. If I go in the list now, we have this different distribution of tags, and if I go query Sadis again, we see that also the structure of the Sadis configuration has changed, not only in the different values of the CNS tags, but it adds parameters that are required from the DT workflow and removes some others that are not required anymore. Andrea, I think you're the one most familiar with the Deutsche Telekom use cases that is online. Does this make sense to you?
Yes, it does. The tag profile is the correct one. The unitag match is the 4096. Yeah, that's perfect. Sometimes we put the C tag to 4096 and not 7. Let me look into that. It shouldn't matter at all, but if it does, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and it's also not really a concern because when you run BBSim, you can specify what you want the C tag to be.
Yeah, totally.
And the same for the S tag. By default, it starts from 900 for mainly historical reason, but if you want it to start from 6 or 4 or whatever value you want, that's fine. There'll just be sequentials, one pair.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll get back to you on that C tag 7. I know it is the actual value. It's just that I want to make sure the 4096 is not needed also there.
Sounds good. Yep. Let me know if you want to to give it a try, running with all the other pieces of the Deutsche Telekom workflow. This patch is available online. You can beat any image, or I can publish the image I was using for testing.
Yeah, what we should probably do is that we should probably try and switch our existing tests to this, because at the moment we have our test running off a custom one-off Sadis configuration that we wrote for the BBSim ones too. We should probably try and look at switching those onto this and see what happens. So maybe we can.
Yeah, one thing you can do when you have BBSim running, you can also get the generated config for all the units.
Yeah.
So if you want to take this one and load it in Onus, you can do it. Or there is also an endpoint that will return you the configuration to point Onus to BBSim.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. We probably ought to integrate this with Kind Volta too, to make it easier for developers. We can maybe discuss offline on how best to do that.
Yeah, well, the first thing would be to merge these patches that are. So now you left a couple comments. The thing that I'm not really sure about is that at the moment we are setting just to get things to work one Sadis format configuration. I'm not too fond of calling them with the operator's name, and I'm not sure if we want to set this at configuration time, because it would be also possible to just set it down here in the URL so that you can have different version with the same tagging scheme. Okay,
yeah, that makes sense. I think we are having some parameters to pass on the workflow, so that could probably be trickled down to the URL, as you were saying. I think that for a first implementation, this looks fine.
Okay. Yeah, there are. This batch is still pretty rough. There are few things I need to go back and clean up. For example, I left to use here because for the CTAG allocation, it would be better to use instead of a string, and some of these minor fixes. Okay, this is everything I had for today's meeting. Is there something else we need to discuss that was not on the agenda? Okay, I'll take that as a no, and I think everyone can get some time back for today. So thank you everyone for joining, and talk to you on Slack for next week.
See you.
Bye everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.